In the world of combat sports, there are legends. And then there are the icons whose names are etched into the very fabric of pop culture. But what if two of the most formidable forces in history, two men whose names alone strike fear into the hearts of opponents, were to face each other in the ultimate showdown? Imagine a battle where sheer power collides with untouchable skill, where every punch, every kick, every move could change the course of history. This is not just any fight, it's a battle of titans. Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, known for his brutal knockout power versus Chuck Norris, a martial arts icon whose speed and technique are as legendary as his real-world exploits. The question is simple: who would come out on top? Tyson, the ferocious boxer, rose to fame with a series of lightning-fast knockouts, dominating the boxing world with an intensity that was unmatched. His unrelenting aggression, coupled with his raw power, made him a nightmare in the ring. But Norris is no slouch. A martial arts master, a black belt in multiple disciplines, and a world champion in karate, Chuck Norris is a living legend in his own right. His abilities extend beyond the dojo. He's known for his mind-bending reflexes, his mastery of every combat style, and his tactical genius. Both men have conquered different arenas, but what happens when these two colossal figures step into the same ring? Will Tyson's raw, savage force overpower Norris's refined technique and wisdom? Or will Norris's precision and legendary composure outlast Tyson's explosive power? As the first round begins, the crowd is silent, knowing that what happens next will be a spectacle unlike anything seen before. Tyson, his eyes locked on Norris, waits for the opening he knows will come. His style is all about controlling the pace with relentless pressure, but Norris isn't intimidated. With every move, Chuck appears calm and measured, his experience shining through as he gauges Tyson's every shift, every breath. Tyson charges forward, fists like hammers ready to deliver a fatal blow. But Norris, ever the tactician, sidesteps with effortless grace, countering Tyson's assault with a precision that only a seasoned fighter could manage. Tyson's attack was fast, but Norris had already seen it coming. The clash of styles couldn't be more apparent: Tyson's brute force, Norris's pinpoint control. For a moment, it seems as if the match will be over in an instant. But just as quickly, the fight transitions into something much more than just a contest of strength. Tyson, feeling the sting of Norris's first counterattack, recalibrates. He knows he can't simply go in guns blazing. The last thing he wants is to be outsmarted by his opponent. Norris, however, seems to have the upper hand, his eyes never leaving Tyson's every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Tyson's next blow comes faster and harder, his uppercut aimed with deadly precision. Norris ducks, his reflexes testing the limits of human capability, and with a swift spin, he delivers a roundhouse kick, narrowly missing Tyson's head by inches. The air in the arena seems to freeze for a split second. Tyson stumbles backward, realizing just how sharp Norris's timing is. But it's not just Tyson's power that's being tested. Norris's endurance is being pushed to the limit as well. He's facing a man who doesn't tire easily, a man who can keep coming forward even when the odds seem stacked against him. As the rounds go on, Norris must rely on more than just technique. He needs strategy, he needs mental toughness, and above all, he needs to avoid being caught by Tyson's crushing blows. Every time he slips out of a dangerous situation, Tyson inches closer to finding that opening he's been waiting for. The tension is building, the battle escalating. The fight has become a deadly dance. Whoever falters first will lose. And just when it seems that Norris has the upper hand, a shift happens. Tyson's right hook lands a thundering strike that shakes Norris to his core. The crowd erupts. Norris is staggered, but he's not out. He regains his stance with the poise of someone who's been through wars before. But now, something has changed. Tyson has tasted blood, and his eyes are filled with the kind of hunger that only a true predator possesses. Norris, however, isn't backing down. He knows this fight isn't just about physical strength. It's a battle of wills, of mental fortitude. He knows how to survive against overwhelming odds. But can he outlast Tyson's brute force? Every exchange becomes more brutal, more desperate. The punches are landing harder, the kicks faster. Neither man is willing to give an inch. The crowd can barely keep up, caught between awe and disbelief at the sheer ferocity of the contest unfolding before them. With each passing moment, the fight grows more unpredictable. It's no longer about just who's stronger or who's faster. It's a question of survival. And as the final round approaches, the air is thick with anticipation. The question looms larger than ever. Who will claim victory in this ultimate clash of legends? Can Tyson's raw power break Norris's calm? Or will Norris's expertise and composure ultimately put an end to the ferocity of Tyson's offense? The clock is ticking, the tension mounting, and only one fighter will emerge victorious. But just as the final round is about to begin, something unexpected happens. What follows next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about combat. The fight had reached a point where the only thing left to question was whether Tyson's ferocity could match the calm of Norris. The atmosphere in the arena buzzed with electric anticipation, each fan locked in the fight of a lifetime. But while the world outside the ring held its breath, inside the squared circle, Tyson and Norris were no longer just fighters. They were legends wrestling, not only for victory, but for a place in history that would never fade. Tyson, with his famous aura of raw aggression, had always thrived on chaos. From his early days, when he was a prodigy in the boxing world, to his reign as the youngest heavyweight champion, Tyson's life had been a storm. His struggles, his triumphs, his demons, they all came crashing together in every punch he threw. His legend wasn't built just on power, but on the fire that burned within him, a fire that pushed him beyond limits. But Chuck Norris? His story was different. Norris wasn't just an athlete, he was a symbol of resilience, discipline, and mental strength. Raised in the tough streets of rural Oklahoma, Norris had trained in martial arts not for fame or fortune, but for personal growth and survival. His journey to becoming a world-renowned martial artist wasn't paved with celebrity endorsements or flashy pay-per-view events. Instead, his was a quiet mastery, refined, methodical, and driven by a desire to be the best at what he did. Unlike Tyson, who faced the world with a defiance that bordered on chaos, Norris had always been a man of control. In the dojo, he was calm. In battle, he was calm. But here, in the face of Tyson's relentless assault, that calm was beginning to be tested. Both men had come to this moment with their own burdens, their own histories. Tyson, having fallen from grace in his later years, knew the price of failure better than anyone. His explosive rise had been matched only by his dramatic fall, leaving him to rebuild not only his career, but his identity. Tyson wasn't just fighting for glory, he was fighting for redemption, a chance to prove that he was still the baddest man on the planet. Norris, on the other hand, had lived a life of discipline. Known for his roles in iconic martial arts films, Norris had built his own brand of toughness, one that seemed unshakable. But even he couldn't deny the weight of his age, the toll that time had taken on his body. Every fight, every move, felt more like a battle against time itself. As the final round began, the fighters stared each other down, both weighing their options. Tyson's eyes burned with determination, his muscles coiled like a spring ready to explode. Norris, despite the battering he'd taken, stood tall, his stance unwavering. He had been in far worse situations before his fights in the ring. His real-world battles, even his movie roles, had all tested his will in ways that most could never understand. But Tyson? Tyson was something different. For the first time in years, Norris could feel the doubt creep in, like a shadow waiting to strike. He knew that Tyson had the ability to end it all in a split second. One wrong move and it could all be over. And yet, despite the odds, Norris remained focused. He wasn't just trying to survive this fight, He was trying to outsmart it. Every move he made was calculated, every decision weighed. He had to find a way to tire Tyson out, to make him overcommit. Tyson's reliance on power and aggression left him vulnerable to those who could endure and outthink him. Norris's mind raced as he darted around Tyson, using his speed to create angles, always staying just out of reach. But Tyson wasn't someone who could be outwitted for long. He knew that at some point, Norris would slip, would make a mistake, and when that happened, Tyson would pounce. There was a moment, just one brief moment, when the energy in the arena shifted. It wasn't just the sound of fists meeting flesh or the crowd roaring in anticipation. It was something deeper, something almost intangible. Tyson's left hook found its mark, striking Norris's jaw with the force of a wrecking ball. For a moment, Norris's legs wobbled, and time seemed to slow down. The fans gasped, knowing that this could be the turning point, the moment that would define the fight. Tyson was on the edge of victory. But Chuck Norris wasn't done yet. He staggered, but his focus remained unbroken. With a deep breath, he pushed through the pain, a look of steely resolve in his eyes. But there was something else going on beneath the surface, a hidden layer of tension neither fighter fully understood. What had begun as a fight for dominance had morphed into something much more personal. Both men had something to prove, not just to each other but to themselves. Tyson, ever the fighter driven by the need for victory, was fighting against the ghosts of his past. Each punch he landed carried the weight of the mistakes he'd made, the fall from grace he couldn't forget. And Norris, despite his outward calm, was fighting his own inner battle, one that no opponent could see. He was no longer just trying to survive Tyson's onslaught. He was fighting against the encroaching feeling that time, age, and wear had finally caught up to him. As the round stretched on, it became clear that neither fighter would give up easily. Each blow was heavier than the last, each move more desperate. Tyson's fists were relentless, while Norris's footwork was nothing short of genius. But the real question was whether Norris could keep evading Tyson's power, or if Tyson's overwhelming aggression would eventually break through. With each passing moment, the stakes grew higher. Every strike, every dodge, every breath was now part of a larger, more complex narrative, one that reached beyond the ring, beyond the fight itself. And then, just as it seemed like the end was near, a loud crack echoed through the arena. The source of the sound was unclear at first, but the fighters paused, both looking to the side. The crowd, which had been screaming in anticipation, suddenly fell silent. What happened next would shock everyone in the building and change the course of the fight forever. As Tyson and Norris shared that fleeting moment of confusion, the true test of their endurance began, one that would require more than just physical strength. Now, the question was no longer about who would land the knockout blow, but about who could survive the fight that was about to unfold, in a way neither of them had prepared for. The story was just beginning. The arena remained frozen, the crowd holding its collective breath as a sharp crack reverberated through the space. Tyson and Norris both turned toward the source of the sound, their senses heightened, muscles tense, as the once electrified atmosphere shifted to one of cautious uncertainty. At first, there was nothing, no immediate threat, no obvious danger. But then, from the shadows of the arena, a figure emerged, a man whose presence felt as if the very air had changed. It was someone the world knew but had never expected to see in this place at this moment. The fighter, tall and cloaked in a dark figure, stepped into the ring. The crowd gasped in unison. Was this a distraction? Was this some kind of stunt? Some elaborate hoax? Neither Tyson nor Norris seemed to know what to make of it. The newcomer was a mystery, his face obscured by a mask, his body cloaked in a long, dark coat that billowed as he walked. His mere presence was enough to shift the dynamics of the fight. Both Tyson and Norris froze, temporarily distracted, uncertain about what was unfolding before their eyes. Neither of them had expected an interruption, let alone a third player entering the ring. The tension in the air, already at a boiling point, now teetered on the edge of chaos. Tyson, never one to back down, narrowed his eyes at the figure. He could sense that this wasn't a simple interruption. Something bigger was at play. The punch that had almost ended Norris's night now seemed insignificant in the face of this new threat. Norris, on the other hand, took a cautious step back, his instincts telling him that this fight had evolved into something he couldn't have anticipated. This wasn't just about him and Tyson anymore. No, this was about survival, and survival meant figuring out who this stranger was and what his intentions were. Masked figure, without uttering a single word, moved toward the center of the ring. He didn't seem to care about the fight between Tyson and Norris. He wasn't interested in the history of these two men or the accolades they carried. This was a power play, one that didn't concern the past, but rather the future. Tyson's breathing quickened as the realization set in. This man wasn't here to watch. He was here to fight. And then, without warning, the figure lunged at Norris. Tyson reacted instinctively, stepping forward to intercept the strange fighter, but Norris, despite the earlier damage to his body, was faster. He sidestepped the attack, spinning on his heels with the agility of someone half his age, his feet barely making a sound on the mat. Norris's counterattack was swift, his roundhouse kick aimed directly at the masked figure's head. But it missed. Just as Norris's leg passed through the air, the figure dropped to the ground with a speed that was nothing short of supernatural, dodging the attack with a fluidity that made Norris's move look sluggish by comparison. The crowd erupted into confusion. This was no ordinary fighter. The audience could sense it. Every move was perfectly calculated, executed with such precision that it was almost as if the man was anticipating every punch, every kick, before it even happened. Norris and Tyson exchanged brief glances, each of them weighing the situation. They had no idea who this intruder was, but it was clear that he wasn't here for a friendly match. The tension between them had grown, a new layer of uncertainty clouding their every move. Tyson, now fully aware that this wasn't just a fight for victory, but for survival, squared his shoulders and launched himself toward the masked figure. His fists came crashing down with a ferocity that would have crushed an ordinary man, but the figure, still masked, simply ducked and rolled away, seemingly moving with the grace of someone who had studied every fighting style in existence. For every punch Tyson threw, the figure danced out of reach, as if mocking the power Tyson possessed. The crowd was in disbelief. This wasn't the kind of fight they had expected to see. The encounter had suddenly shifted into something much darker, much more dangerous. In the midst of this chaos, Norris seemed to regain his bearings. He understood that in a situation like this, brute strength alone wouldn't win the day, not when facing someone who had mastered not just one form of combat, but all of them. Norris's mind raced, calculating his next move, analyzing his opponent's style. He needed to think ahead. The figure wasn't simply a fighter. He was a strategist, a tactician. With every move, Norris saw it. This masked figure was playing a different game altogether. The figure suddenly stopped, as if sensing Norris's realization. He tilted his head slightly, acknowledging Norris's awareness with a slight smirk, though still hidden beneath the mask. It was a strange, unnerving moment. Norris knew something was off about this fighter. There was a feeling in his gut, one that told him this wasn't just about martial arts or boxing, it was about something much deeper. Was this a test? A trap? Norris couldn't be sure, but what he did know was this: he couldn't afford to underestimate this unknown adversary. As Tyson and Norris regrouped, the masked figure raised his hands, as if signaling for the chaos to pause, to allow them a moment to catch their breath. The crowd fell eerily silent, as though they too understood that something monumental was about to unfold. But just as quickly, the figure dropped into a fighting stance, faster than either man could react. A blur of motion, and before Tyson could even lift his guard, the masked fighter's fist collided with his chest with the force of a freight train. Tyson was sent sprawling back, crashing into the ropes, stunned, his breath knocked out of him. Norris, seeing the vulnerability in Tyson's posture, sprang into action, rushing toward the figure with a renewed sense of purpose. But the stranger, effortlessly gliding back into a defensive stance, spun with lightning speed, meeting Norris's charge with a perfectly timed, devastatingly precise elbow to the side. Norris stumbled, gasping for air, feeling the shockwave of the blow reverberate through his ribs. It was a fight neither man had anticipated, and yet here they were, pushed to their physical and mental limits, facing an opponent who was unlike any they had ever encountered. The tension had reached its peak, and just as both Tyson and Norris struggled to regain their footing, the figure spoke, his voice low, chilling. "You've been playing with fire for too long," he said. "It's time for the real test." The words lingered in the air, thick with menace. What was this real test? What was this figure preparing them for? Neither Tyson nor Norris had the answers, but one thing was certain: the fight was far from over, and the stakes were higher than either of them could have ever imagined. The figure's words hung in the air like a challenge neither Tyson nor Norris could ignore. The crowd, still stunned by the sudden turn of events, leaned forward in collective anticipation, sensing that this was no longer just a fight, it was a test of their very will to survive. Tyson, breathing heavily from the previous exchange, slowly pushed himself up from the ropes. His chest heaved with every breath, his body battered but not broken. Norris, equally winded, steadied himself, his mind calculating, evaluating this new adversary. What was his game? Who was he really? The stranger's mask remained impenetrable, but his presence was unmistakable, a sense of calm yet deadly focus that sent a chill through the arena. The sudden clarity in his voice before his attack echoed in their minds. The real test. What did that mean? And why now, when both fighters were already at their breaking point? Without warning, the figure lunged forward again, moving faster than either of them could process. Tyson's instincts kicked in, his reflexes still sharp despite the damage he had taken. He attempted a right hook, the same devastating blow that had ended countless fights, but this time the masked figure countered effortlessly. In one fluid motion, he ducked under Tyson's punch, shifted, and delivered a crushing knee to Tyson's abdomen. The sheer force of it left Tyson gasping, his knees buckling as he fell back into the ropes once again. He was struggling to breathe, the pain almost unbearable, but his resolve remained. He wasn't going to give up. Not here, not now. Norris, seeing his opportunity, rushed forward, his mind racing to formulate a plan. He was no stranger to adversity, but this opponent, this thing seemed to anticipate every move before it happened. His speed, precision, and ability to read the fight made it clear that he wasn't just a fighter. He was a strategist, a force of nature that was not to be underestimated. Norris charged, trying to outmaneuver the masked figure, but each attempt to land a blow was met with a counterattack, swift and brutal. The pain was beginning to take its toll on Norris as well. His movements were growing slower, his body tired, the weight of his age now fully felt. But in that moment, something shifted. As Norris faced the masked figure, he realized that this was no longer just about survival, it was about something deeper, something personal. They weren't just fighting for a title, or for glory, or even for redemption. They were fighting for the right to stand in the ring at all. This wasn't about Tyson or Norris defeating each other anymore. It was about facing the unknown, the chaos, the test that this masked figure had created. It was about proving they still had what it took to fight when everything seemed stacked against them. Just as the figure advanced once more, preparing to strike, a sudden realization hit both Tyson and Norris at the same time. This wasn't just a fight, it was a trap. The masked figure had led them both to this very moment, draining them of their energy, pushing them to their limits. He wasn't interested in a physical fight at all. No. The real battle was about endurance, about testing their resilience, and seeing if they could fight through the mental and emotional fatigue that had crept in. The figure wasn't here to defeat them. He was here to force them to face their own fears. Tyson's head cleared as he pushed past the pain. He had been through worse. He had fallen, fought his demons, and clawed his way back time and time again. This was no different. With every ounce of strength he had left, he turned to face the masked figure one last time. Norris, too, took a deep breath, his body aching, his mind sharp. They might not have been able to defeat the figure directly, but together they could find a way to survive this. It was then, in that moment of clarity, that Tyson and Norris made a silent pact. They would no longer be pawns in this strange game. They would fight together, not against each other, but against the force that sought to break them. With renewed determination, the two fighters united, launching a combined attack against the masked figure. Tyson, with his raw power, unleashed a barrage of blows while Norris used his agility and precision to keep the figure on the defensive. For the first time in the fight, the figure seemed rattled. His calculated movements were no longer as flawless. He couldn't keep up with their combined fury. But just when it seemed like victory was within their grasp, the figure did something unexpected. He stopped, his body still as stone, and tilted his head slightly, as if contemplating something deeper. The arena fell silent. Tyson and Norris, exhausted and battered, paused, unsure of what was happening. And then, with a speed that defied belief, the figure ripped off his mask. The crowd gasped as the face behind the mask was revealed. It wasn't just anyone, it was someone they knew, someone they had never expected to see. The figure's identity shocked everyone, leaving Tyson and Norris speechless. The man standing before them wasn't just a fighter, he was a former legend of the ring, a fighter who had vanished from the spotlight years ago, believed to be gone for good. The masked figure wasn't a new threat at all. He was a ghost from the past, someone who had seen it all, someone who had been waiting for this moment. With a smirk, the former champion spoke, his voice calm yet filled with an eerie confidence. You both passed the test. The real battle wasn't with me, it was with yourselves. The fight was never about who was the stronger fighter. It was about who could still believe. In that instant, Tyson and Norris understood. The true fight had been within themselves all along. The masked figure had been testing their resilience, their spirit, pushing them to confront their limitations and their fears. The test wasn't just physical, it was psychological, a final challenge to see if they still had the heart to keep going, even when it seemed impossible. Tyson and Norris stood there, breathing heavily, but a sense of clarity washed over them. They had faced their demons literally and figuratively and emerged stronger for it. The battle was over. The real test had been passed, not by defeating an opponent, but by enduring and overcoming everything that had come before. As the former champion walked away, leaving them with their thoughts, the crowd erupted into applause. The fight had ended, but the lesson would linger far longer. Tyson and Norris, two men from different worlds, had not only survived, they had proven that even in the face of impossible odds, true champions never give up.